Ed, I want to follow up on not cutting corners, and I want to talk with you about the preparation of your criminal cases. And in particular, what are you like in the 2 weeks prior to a trial? And if I could do this in the form of a hypothetical, guy comes to you with a murder charge where he's had to shoot someone and that person died, and he says, hey, that guy pulled a gun on me first. And that's what is it like? How do you prepare your criminal cases? If that case comes to you, that's your case right now. Kind of walk me through the preparation up to right before you're trying that case.
I'm just going to tell you a story to begin with about reality. I'd been a lawyer in my dad's office, 3 rooms, his office, reception, and a library. And in that library, I had a desk about this wide, and I had a salary from my dad of $300 a month. And I'm there, he's gone. It's about 6 o'clock, the phone rings, one of those dial phones, picked it up. And there was a deep voice on the other end of the line. And he said, hello, I want to speak to that young Garland. I said, well, that's me. And he said, well, I know your dad. He says you're going to be a good lawyer. And one of my parishioners has killed her husband. And I want you to defend him. He said, this is Reverend Martin Luther King Sr. I said, well, of course, yes, and I knew who he was, and he had been sending cases to Dad for years, families. So this is my first murder case. And I take the case, and this woman had taken a knife out, and she had stuck her husband in the backyard of a house where they were having a party on Sunday afternoon, and he had no weapon. And when she worked at the farmer's market and pared vegetables for the cafeteria, had a little paring knife, and she just stuck it right in here, and it just sliced off the bottom of his heart. And so I got it ready. I knew about self-defense. I read all the self-defense. I'd heard my dad talk about self-defense, but and so I was getting ready to try the case. The morning of the trial, had been assigned to the best prosecutor in the Fulton County office, J. Roger Thompson, later a federal prosecutor and federal magistrate. And then he had a career after that. And he was just known for being the best there was. They set this down for trial, and it was probably 5 o'clock in the morning. I'm going to trial. Dad hadn't, he'd said, read the charges, and he just throwing me in there. And he called me up and said, are you ready on your case? I said, yeah, I think I'm ready. And he said, well, have you been to the scene? I said, well, no, Dad, I haven't. He said, I'll be over there in 5 minutes. He came over. We went out to an African-American neighborhood, went to this house. The sun hadn't come up, went into the backyard. And he said, what's your defense? And I said, my defense is that he had beat her in the past. He'd have brutalized her in the past. She knew with a look in his eyes, she knew what he was going to do. And he was right there near a rock, and she knew that he was just going to grab that rock and bust her brains out. And he said, do you see the rock? What does the rock look like? I said, well, she's described it to me. I actually drawn a little drawing as I try to show it. And I looked around and I saw a rock look like it, and I picked up the rock and went to court. Dad dropped me off. So in the trial, I put the defendant on the stand. I proved up a long history of abuse, subpoenaed the records from Grady Hospital. I put her on the stand, and she told her story, and I said, I want to show you defense exhibit number 1. Do you recognize this? Well, that looks just like the rock. I said, I had a sticker. I said, Your Honor, I introduce defense exhibit number 1. Prosecutor hadn't objected. The rock went into evidence. I then went over to the jury, and I took the rock, and I said I wanted them to see it, and I went down. And then I put it on the jury rail, but it was a rock that had angles on it, and it fell into the jury box. Bam! The juror jumped back, and she was acquitted. And so I learned, and then I read about lawyers. I read Sam Irwin, the old North Carolina judge and lawyer that had been the chairman of the Watergate Committee. And he told about being a young lawyer. And he was worried. He'd been appointed to this terrible case, and he went to the judge and said, "Now, Judge, I just really need to know what to do. I've never tried a case." And the judge said to him, "Sam, go salt down the facts. The law will take care of itself." So between those two stories and others, know that you got to go out there and get in the shoes of that client. You got to get in the position. You've got to know what everything looks like around you. If it's at night, you got to get out there at night. So I learned that way. And so the lawyer must be the master of the facts as best he can. And it used to be you couldn't get the facts. You didn't have any discovery. They took the stand. You didn't know what they were going to say. So you also got to have resourcefulness and a belief. No matter what that witness says, I'm going to watch and listen. I'm going to find the weak spot. So it's never changed. Now you got to not only do that, you got to master the law. And then you got to master who are the witnesses and what are they like. And what is the judge like? And what is the prosecutor like? And God knows what the jury is going to be like. So you got to master all of those things and have all those moving parts. And so 2 weeks before Taurus, I'm in a state of anxiety, fear of failure, fear of not knowing enough, not knowing what the right thing to say is, and frightened that I won't do a good job. And I think that the danger for lawyers thinks that he knows what he's doing. So I kind of view it, you got a blank page. I don't know anything. What is the law? What are the facts? Who are the people? I think I know it, but do I really know it? What's the latest? Has there been a new case? Don Samuel or the people around me, get us the case. Get us, just give me 2 cases and a statute. Latest cases, the most on point. I can read it quick. Back it up with briefs and have everything we need, but I'm going to present it. So it's living it. And when that phone rings today and the person calls the lawyer, he's got to look at that case as the most important case in the world. It might be that it's a very profitable case. It may be it's somebody that can pay you a little bit and your fee starts at $50 an hour and gets down to minus $50 an hour, but you never walk away. I've never sued a client. I had plenty of them not pay their bills. But I saw my dad keep a drawer full of promissory notes. And come Christmas time, he'd mail the notes back to the clients. Because he knew they would have paid him if they could. I've got his ledger books in the basement where the fee, $15, 1932. Assault and battery, $10, $20. He was an independent lawyer.
So Ed, staying with what Taurus asked you, and one of the concerns I have with younger lawyers, and Rap, based on his students, may have some perspective on this. My impression is that there's a commitment gap and an education gap between me and Taurus and Rap and the lawyers that are sort of generations behind us. My impression is that there is not an appreciation that young lawyers who say they want to be criminal defense lawyers or who hold themselves out as criminal defense lawyers, that they really are prepared to make the personal sacrifice that comes with doing this work. And by that, I mean, maybe you're missing family events. To me, when I did criminal defense work, the personal sacrifice was intense in terms of what I felt and just things that I couldn't do in the weeks before getting ready for trial, much less a day or two before when I'm just in a totally different place. But can you talk a little bit more about the preparation process for you, just on a personal level, and how you, over 60 years, how have you been able to maintain partners, a family, and children, and just not have the practice of doing criminal defense work sort of tear you apart?
Well, I think you just make certain commitments. And I would say that my enthusiasm for the practice made it difficult for me to be the father or the husband that I wanted to be. But I think you just stay committed to those roles and do the best you can. And I think younger lawyers and modern experience have taught people how to balance it out better than I balanced it out. That getting the idea that when you stop and play, you're doing something to help yourself. You're not being bad, because that refreshes your brain. But I didn't have that particular concept in mind the first 20 years. I left once when I had 2 babies and went and left town and stayed gone a year and tried a case in a federal courtroom for 9 months when I defended Glenn W. Turner. And it was in front of Judge Choflat, the chief judge of the 11th Circuit for many years. Very distinguished jurist, but it was his first federal trial. And my client was hated by the attorney generals of the United States. And so I made some sacrifices, and I would say that you've got to balance it out. And it's very hard. But you have to be willing. When that trial date is coming up, you got to think, live, breathe that case, be searching for the right words or the right issues or the right thing to do. I've seen some lawyers, do remarkable things in courtrooms when all the facts were against them, when they just stayed in there and advanced their client's cause. So you can make a difference. You may fail. And the other part is to not be afraid of losing. And finally, don't be afraid of a judge who's mistreating your client.
There you go.